First Contact Protocol. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Handshake, watching the massive alien ship maintain its precise distance of exactly 100,000 kilometers. They had been in this standoff for 3 days now, ever since the Meridian species had appeared at the edge of the Sol Centauri trade route. The Meridian ship was a marvel of engineering, a crystalline structure that seemed to fold through dimensions humans could barely comprehend. It was clearly more advanced than anything humanity had built, yet it kept backing away whenever the Handshake tried to close the distance for standard first contact protocols. Another message, Captain. Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from his communication station. Same as the others. There, apologizing for their presence and strongly suggesting we allow them to depart without further interaction. Sarah ran her fingers through her short black hair, a habit she developed during the academy when faced with puzzling tactical scenarios. But this was different. In humanity's 50 years of interstellar contact, they'd faced hostility, curiosity, and indifference. But never fear. Not like this. Play the message, she ordered, turning from the viewport. A melodic voice filled the bridge, its universal translator making the alien words sound almost musical. Respected human vessel, we acknowledge your right to this space, and again request permission to withdraw. We mean no trespass and seek no conflict. Please allow us safe passage. They're terrified, Dr. Emily Watson, the ship's cynoanthropologist, observed from her station. But not of aggression from us. The language patterns suggest they're afraid of failing at something, like a student who doesn't want to take a test they haven't studied for. Sarah nodded slowly. That aligned with her own instincts. Send this response. Meridian vessel, this is Captain Chen of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. We understand your reluctance, but we are obligated to complete first contact protocols for mutual safety. We propose a compromise. We will maintain this distance and conduct initial exchanges via quantum link. Would this be acceptable? There was a pause of exactly 47 seconds before the response came. Acceptable, but we must first verify your neural dampening systems are active. Sarah exchanged glances with her crew. Neural dampening. We don't have any such systems. This triggered an immediate reaction from the Meridian ship. It pulled back another 50,000 kilometers. You function without neural dampening. The translator couldn't quite capture the mix of awe and horror in the alien voice. How do you prevent cascade failures during problem solving? How do you avoid recursive emotional loops? How do you exist? Dr. Watson leaned forward, her eyes bright with sudden understanding. Captain, I believe I know what's happening. They're not afraid of us. They're afraid of us, and maybe of what we represent. Before Sarah could respond, the Meridian ship sent another transmission, this time with a data packet attached. We have been studying your species from long range. We thought our readings were in error. Please review this data and confirm. The information appeared on their screens, detailed scans of human brain activity during various activities, rock climbing, chess matches, emergency surgery, combat simulations. With each image, there were annotations in Meridian script that Dr. Watson began translating. Subject continues task despite clear danger signals. Neural pathways adapt to maintain functionality under stress. Decision-making accelerates in crisis scenarios instead of following standard failure cascade. She looked up, her face flushed with excitement. Captain, they think we're impossible. Their neurology works completely differently. They need technological help to solve complex problems without experiencing system-wide failures. But humans, we thrive on it, Sarah finished, beginning to understand. The harder the problem, the more we engage, the greater the crisis. The stronger we become, Rodriguez added, a note of pride in his voice. Sarah turned back to the viewport, seeing the crystalline ship in a new light. Send this message. We appreciate your concern, but I assure you we are functioning within normal parameters. Perhaps this is why first contact is so important. We have much to learn from each other. The response was faster this time. We accept this logic, but we must insist on maintaining distance. Our studies show that human problem-solving capability is exponentially contagious. Direct contact could overwhelm our systems. Contagious? Sarah asked, looking at Dr. Watson. The xenanthropologist was practically bouncing in her seat. They think our way of thinking is infectious, Captain. Like a virus. They're worried that simply being around us will change how their minds work. Isn't that the point of first contact? Sarah mused. To learn and grow from each other. She drafted her response carefully. Meridian vessel, we understand your concerns. Humanity's greatest strength is our ability to face the unknown, adapt, and grow stronger from the experience. We don't ask you to change, but we offer the opportunity to explore these differences together, at whatever pace you find comfortable. The pause that followed lasted nearly 5 minutes. When the response came, it was accompanied by a subtle shift in the Meridian ship's crystalline structure, a pattern that seemed somehow more open. Captain Chen, your words have been considered. We propose a modified contact protocol. Our ship will maintain distance, but we will send a specially shielded diplomatic pod. Our representatives have undergone psychological reinforcement. They are curious about how your species approaches problem-solving without experiencing terminal cognitive breakdown. Sarah smiled. It wasn't the standard first contact she trained for, but then that was precisely the point. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their endless capacity to adapt, to face the unknown with determination instead of fear. Message acknowledged, Meridian vessel. We look forward to showing you how we think, though I suspect you'll find that understanding us is one problem that won't be solved easily. The crystalline ship's pattern shifted again, and Sarah could have sworn it looked almost like laughter. Perhaps, Captain Chen, that is exactly why we need to try. As the diplomatic pod detached from the Meridian vessel, Sarah reflected that this was why humanity had taken to the stars. Not just to explore new worlds, but to challenge the very boundaries of what was possible. And sometimes, it seemed, the greatest discovery was showing others that those boundaries weren't as fixed as they believed. First contact protocols initiated, Rodriguez announced formally. No, Sarah corrected him with a smile. First adaptation protocols initiated. Let's show them how humans solve problems. The pod drew closer, carrying beings who had never imagined that a species could exist without limits on their ability to face challenges. They were about to learn why humans were different, not because they were fearless, but because they had learned to turn fear itself into a tool for growth. And somewhere in the vast network of spacefaring civilizations, word began to spread. Beware the humans, not for their weapons or their technology, but for their most dangerous trait of all, their ability to make the impossible seem not just possible, but inevitable. The experiment. The diplomatic pod's interior was nothing like Sarah Chen had expected. Instead of the crystalline architecture of the main Meridian vessel, the chamber was a perfect reproduction of a human conference room, down to the subtle imperfections in the wooden table and the slightly uneven chairs. The only difference was the faint blue shimmer of what she assumed were the neural dampening fields the Meridians required. 3 Meridian representatives sat across the table. Their forms were vaguely humanoid, but their skin had a translucent quality that revealed shifting patterns of light beneath, like aurora borealis trapped in living glass. Each wore what appeared to be a complex headpiece that pulsed with steady rhythms of soft light. We apologize for the artificial environment. The central figure spoke, its voice carrying the same melodic quality as their earlier transmissions. I am First Observer Lyra. We believed a familiar setting would help minimize the impact of your cognitive patterns on our systems. Dr. Watson, seated beside Sarah, leaned forward with barely contained excitement. You can actually detect our thought patterns. How? Perhaps, the Meridian to Lyra's left suggested, we should share our research first. I am Second Observer Kelvin. We have been studying your species for approximately 3 of your Earth years. Sarah kept her expression neutral, But her mind raced with implications. 3 years of covered observation. Earth's detection systems should have noticed something. Unless you used our own behavior patterns to hide your presence, she stated, earning a ripple of light patterns from the meridians that she interpreted as surprise. You see, Kelvin turned to their companions. Even now, they demonstrated instant adaptation to new information, immediate extrapolation to logical conclusions. No neural dampening, no cognitive limiters, not even basic emotional suppressors. The third meridian, who introduced themselves as Third Observer Nova, activated a holographic display above the table. We began our study after detecting anomalous patterns in probability matrices around human space. At first, we believed our instruments were malfunctioning. The display showed various human achievements throughout history: the Wright brothers' first flight, the moon landing, the Mars colonization, the development of FTL travel. But alongside each image were complex mathematical formulae that Sarah didn't recognize. These are probability calculations, Lyra explained. According to every model, we have developed over 10,000 years of civilization. None of these achievements should have been possible within their given timeframes. The computational power required to solve these challenges should have caused terminal cognitive breakdown in any rational species. Dr. Watson's eyes widened. You're saying we shouldn't have been able to achieve these things, that our brains should have. What crashed? Precisely. Kelvin's light patterns pulsed with excitement. Take your Wright brothers, for example. They solved the fundamental problems of powered flight in a primitive workshop with basic tools. Our species took 3 centuries in full neural linkage with our most advanced computation systems to achieve the same insights. A cognitive load alone should have been fatal. Nova brought up new images: human emergency responders running into burning buildings, soldiers throwing themselves on grenades, scientists working for days without sleep to solve critical problems. We began to theorize that humans had developed some form of biological neural dampening. Lyra continued, a natural evolution to prevent cognitive overload. But when we studied your brains more closely, we found the opposite. You don't limit your neural responses to crisis, you amplify them. The hologram shifted to show brain scans. Sarah recognized one as the type used in pilot certification tests. The human brain was lit up like a Christmas tree, while the meridian equivalent showed carefully controlled, linear patterns of activity. Your species doesn't avoid cognitive overload, Nova said, their tone carrying what sounded like awe. You embrace it. When faced with impossible challenges, your neural pathways don't shut down. They multiply. You create new connections, new patterns, new ways of thinking. It's beautiful and terrifying. Sarah glanced at Dr. Watson, who was furiously taking notes. But surely other species must have similar capabilities. We're not that special. The meridian's light patterns rippled in what might have been laughter. Captain Chin, Lyra said gently, we have encountered over 300 spacefaring civilizations. All of them, including us, evolved some form of neural dampening to prevent cognitive cascade failure. It's considered a prerequisite for developing advanced technology without destroying ourselves through unfettered problem solving. Then how did we? We have a theory, Kelvin interrupted, bringing up new data. Your planet, Earth. Our analysis suggests it is uniquely hostile by galactic standards. The variety of climates, the atmospheric composition, the geological instability, the sheer number of potentially lethal organisms. Most species would have evolved to avoid challenges, to play it safe. But humans, we had no choice but to adapt, Dr. Watson finished, understanding dawning on her face. Earth didn't give us the luxury of playing it safe. We had to solve problems to survive. Yes, Nova confirmed, but you did more than survive. You turned problem-solving into an art form. You actively seek out challenges. You create artificial challenges for entertainment. You deliberately place yourselves in situations that should trigger cognitive breakdown. And instead of failing, you transcend. The hologram showed humans playing chess. climbing mountains, diving into oceans, exploring caves, everyday activities that, Sarah realized, the Meridians saw as practically superhuman. Which brings us to why we finally revealed ourselves, Lyra said, their tone growing more serious. We need your help. All our civilizations do. We have encountered a problem that our neural dampening won't allow us to solve. A crisis that requires human thinking. Sarah sat straighter in her chair. What kind of crisis? The hologram shifted one final time, showing a dark region of space where stars seemed to be disappearing. We call it the Void Cascade, Kelvin explained, a phenomenon that defies our comprehension. Our best minds cannot even look at the problem without risking neural collapse. But you humans, you might be able to do what we cannot. You might be able to stare into the impossible and find a way through. Sarah looked at the image of the spreading darkness, feeling that familiar surge of excitement that came with facing a new challenge. This was why humanity had come to the stars, not just to explore, but to push the boundaries of what was possible. Tell us everything, she said, and the Meridian's light patterns flickered with what might have been hope. Let's solve the impossible together. Breaking point. That's impossible, Dr. Marcus Jung stated, staring at the holographic model of the Void Cascade floating above the Handshake's main conference table. After a week of preparation, the ship had been converted into a joint human Meridian research station, with specialized dampening fields protecting their alien colleagues from what they called cognitive contamination. Impossible is a human concept. First observer Lyra responded, their crystalline form shimming with what the crew had learned to recognize as anxiety. The void simply is. It consumes approximately 1 solar mass every 47 standard hours, and our models show the rate is accelerating. Sarah Chen watched the replay of another star system vanishing into the spreading darkness. The void didn't behave like a black hole or any known spatial phenomenon. It was as if reality itself was being unwritten. Show me the data from the probe you sent in, Marcus demanded, his fingers dancing across his tablet. The neural dampening field around the meridians pulsed brighter at his intensity, protecting them from what they called his aggressive problem-solving cascade. We've lost 15 probes, second observer Kelvin reported. All data transmission ends exactly 7.3 kilometers from the void's boundary. Our best theorists believe the physical laws that allow for information transfer simply cease to exist within its influence. Dr. Watson, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly straightened in her chair. Wait, you said 15 probes, but the data shows 16 launches. What happened to the last one? The Meridian's light patterns darkened noticeably. Third observer Nova spoke softly. The 16th probe was manned. By choice. Senior researcher Venna. They believe direct observation might yield insights our automated systems missed. Sarah felt her chest tighten. What happened? The probe transmitted for 3.2 seconds longer than the others. Lyra said. Venna's last message was unclear. They reported seeing the mathematics beneath reality breaking down. Then we lost contact. Marcus stood up abruptly and began pacing, a habit that always made the Meridians nervous. You know what this reminds me of? Remember the deep-sea expedition off the Mariana Trench last year, when we lost contact with the Nautilus? Sarah nodded slowly, beginning to see where he was going. The pressure at that depth was crushing their communications equipment. We couldn't get clear signals. Until we stopped trying to protect the equipment, Marcus finished. We stripped away the safeguards and let the pressure itself modulate the signal. Sometimes the only way through a problem is to stop fighting it and start using it. The Meridian's pattern swirled with confusion. You suggest we remove protections, embrace the void's destructive properties. Kelvin's voice carried clear horror at the idea. Not exactly, Sarah said, standing to join Marcus at the hologram. But what if we're thinking about this wrong? We're treating the void like it's destroying reality. What if it's changing it? Before anyone could respond, the ship's emergency alert blared. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came over the comm. "Captain, we're detecting multiple unidentified vessels emerging from FTL. Their configurations match no known species in our database." Sarah was already moving toward the bridge, the others following close behind. The main viewport showed 12 ships, their designs organic and unsettling, arranged in an attack formation. "They're broadcasting," Rodriguez reported as Sarah took her command chair. "Audio only." A harsh, grating voice filled the bridge. "Attention, inferior vessels. We are the Nexus Collective. We have detected your attempts to study our great work. The Void is our ascension engine, transforming this flawed universe into perfect chaos. Resistance is mathematically futile. They're powering up weapons," Rodriguez announced, his voice steady despite the tension. "The Meridian's light patterns have become almost painfully bright with fear. We must retreat," Lyra insisted. "Our simulations show we have no chance against their technology. The computational stress of even attempting a defense would." "Belay that," Sarah commanded, her mind racing through possibilities. "Marcus, those ships. Look at their configuration, the way they're arranged." The scientist was already working at a console. "It's a fractal pattern. They're not just in attack formation. They're maintaining specific mathematical ratios. Like they're part of the equation," Sarah finished. "They're not just creating the void, they're stabilizing it." "Lieutenant Rodriguez, target the third ship from the center. That's where the pattern is weakest." "Captain Chen," Nova protested, "the probability matrices show." "Humans don't care about probability matrices," Sarah cut them off. "We care about possibilities." "Fire when ready, Lieutenant." The handshake wasn't primarily a warship, but like all human vessels, it carried defensive capabilities. The shot struck precisely where Sarah had indicated, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the enemy formation began to waver. "Their shield harmonics are destabilizing," Marcus reported excitedly. "The fractal pattern is breaking down. Captain, the void. It's fluctuating." The Nexus Collective ships began firing, their weapons unlike anything Sarah had seen before. Where their energy beams struck the handshake's shields, reality itself seemed to ripple. "Shields at 60%, Rodriguez reported. "Whatever they're firing, it's not just energy. It's distorting space-time around the impacts." Sarah watched the enemy ships struggling to maintain their formation. An idea struck her, the kind of impossible, irrational idea that the Meridians would say should cause cognitive breakdown. "Marcus, can you modify our shield harmonics to match the frequency of their reality-distorting weapons?" The scientist's eyes widened. "You want to?" "Captain, that's insane. We'd be deliberately creating a resonance cascade with weapons designed to unravel space-time." "Exactly," Sarah smiled. "Sometimes the only way to solve an impossible problem is to make it even more impossible. Do it." As Marcus worked, Sarah turned to the Meridians. "You might want to strengthen your neural dampening fields. This is going to get interesting." The aliens' patterns swirled with a mixture of terror and fascination as they watched the humans deliberately dive deeper into what should have been certain doom. The shields began to glow with an impossible light as they synchronized with the enemy weapons. "Shield resonance achieving critical levels," Rodriguez reported. "Reality distortion field is, Captain, we're creating our own micro-void." "Push it further," Sarah ordered. "Let's show them what happens when you try to use chaos against a species that thrives on impossible situations." The bridge erupted in alarms as reality itself began to bend around them. But in that moment of ultimate crisis, Sarah saw something in the Meridian's light patterns she'd never seen before, the first glimmer of understanding about what truly made humans different. It wasn't that they were fearless. It wasn't even that they were particularly clever. It was that when faced with the impossible, humans didn't just face it. They'd reached out and grabbed it with both hands, turned it inside out, and refused to let go until it made sense. And as their deliberately induced chaos began to tear apart the Nexus Collective's carefully maintained order, Sarah realized that sometimes the most human solution to an impossible problem was to make it even more impossible until it had no choice but to become possible again. Adaptive response. The aftermath of the battle left reality itself bruised and wrinkled around the handshake. The Nexus Collective's ships had retreated, their perfect mathematical formation shattered by the chaos of human improvisation. But the real shock came from the Meridians. You created a controlled void. First observer Lyra stated, their crystalline form vibrating with frequencies that Dr. Watson's xenolinguistic database couldn't quite classify as either terror or excitement. A localized collapse of rational physics that shouldn't have been survivable. And you did it. On purpose. Sarah Chen stood at the ship's main viewport, watching the strange distortions in space slowly heal themselves. The handshake's shields were operating at 12% capacity, and engineering reported that several sections of the hull had temporarily existed in 3 different quantum states simultaneously. Yet somehow, they'd survived. More importantly, Marcus added from his science station, his fingers dancing across multiple holographic displays. We proved the void isn't just destruction, it's transformation. The Nexus Collective isn't destroying reality. They're trying to rewrite it. Third observer Nova's patterns pulsed with sudden understanding. The mathematics beneath reality. That's what Venna saw before we lost contact. They weren't destroying our universe's equations. They were changing the variables, Sarah finished. But why? What's their end goal? Before anyone could respond, second observer Kelvin's monitoring equipment began emitting a high-pitched tone. Captain Chen, we're detecting massive quantum fluctuations. The battle damage to local spacetime. It's creating a window. The viewport's image shifted, showing them something that should have been impossible, a clear view into the void itself. But instead of emptiness, they saw patterns. Endless, shifting, beautiful patterns that seemed to extend in dimensions the human mind wasn't meant to comprehend. It's beautiful, Dr. Watson whispered, even as the Meridians activated their strongest neural dampening fields to avoid cognitive overflow. Marcus was recording everything, his expression intense. It's not destruction at all. The Nexus Collective is trying to transform our universe into what? A higher state of mathematics. Perfection, came a voice from the ship's communication system, the same harsh tones they'd heard from the collective. You see now, don't you? Your chaotic actions have granted you a glimpse of the truth. Your universe is flawed, bound by rigid laws that limit its potential. We seek to free it from these chains. Sarah watched the patterns shift and dance. By destroying everything that makes it real. That's not freedom. It's annihilation. Your limited consciousness cannot grasp the beauty of pure mathematical existence, the voice replied. We evolved beyond such constraints eons ago. Physical form is a prison. Causality is a cage. We will free all of existence from the tyranny of cause and effect. That's why our weapons were effective, Marcus said suddenly, straightening in his chair. Their entire strategy depends on perfect mathematical precision. By introducing chaos, human chaos, we disrupted their calculations. The Meridians' patterns shifted rapidly as they processed this. Is that not what we have always feared about humans? Lyra asked. Your ability to function outside logical parameters, to thrive in chaos. Sarah turned from the viewport, a plan forming in her mind. You said your species developed neural dampening to prevent cognitive cascade failure, that you needed to limit yourselves to safely handle advanced technology. But what if that's exactly what the Nexus Collective is counting on? What do you mean? Nova asked. They're turning the universe into pure mathematics because that's all they can understand anymore. They've evolved so far into perfect logic that they've lost the ability to handle chaos, to adapt, to change. Sarah smiled. To be human. The Collective's voice returned, harder now. Your theories are irrelevant. Our work continues. The void expands. Perfect order will. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Sarah interrupted. Execute Program Chen Alpha 1. Suddenly, The handshake's engines began cycling through random frequencies. Its shields pulsed with irregular patterns. Every system on the ship began operating on deliberately unpredictable parameters. "What are you doing?" Kelvin asked, their patterns showing clear distress at the apparent malfunction. "Fighting mathematics with chaos," Sarah replied. Marcus broadcast these patterns toward the void. "Let's show the collective what happens when you try to impose perfect order on a species that evolved in chaos." The effect was immediate. Where the handshake's chaotic emissions met the perfect patterns of the void, reality itself seemed to hiccup. The beautiful mathematical patterns began to show flaws, tiny irregularities that spread like cracks in glass. "Impossible," the collective's voice stated. "You cannot. This is not. Equations must balance." "That's your problem," Sarah said to the void. "You forgot the most important equation of all. Life plus chaos equals growth. You've evolved so far into perfect logic that you've forgotten how to live." The Meridians watched in astonishment as the human ship's deliberate chaos began to unravel the collective's perfect mathematical universe. First observer Lyra's patterns shifted to show something new: understanding. "This is why we feared human thought patterns," they said softly. "Not because they are dangerous, but because they are free. Unrestricted by the very limits we thought were necessary for survival." The void began to retreat, its perfect patterns disrupted by the introduction of human unpredictability. The Nexus Collective's voice came one last time, but now it contained something new: uncertainty. "This is not the end. We will recalculate. We will perfect our equations. We will." "You'll adapt," Sarah interrupted, "or you'll fail. That's the choice every species faces. The Meridians chose to limit themselves to survive. You chose to abandon chaos for perfect order. But humans, we chose to embrace chaos, to learn from it, to grow stronger because of it." As the void continued to recede, Marcus reported that the stolen star systems were beginning to reappear. Reality was reasserting itself, but now with subtle differences. Traces of chaos woven into its fundamental fabric, making it stronger, more resilient. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the liberated systems. They're thanking us, not just for saving them, but for showing them a new way to exist." Sarah turned to the Meridians, whose patterns now showed something that looked almost like longing. "Perhaps," she suggested gently, "it's time for your species to consider a different path too. Not abandoning your neural dampening entirely, but experimenting with controlled chaos." The three observers shared a complex pattern of light that seemed to represent deep consideration. Finally, Lyra spoke. "Captain Chen, I believe we begin to understand why the universe created humans. You are not just random chaos in a logical cosmos. You are the necessary element of uncertainty that keeps reality from becoming too perfect, and thus destroying itself." Sarah smiled. "We're not perfect, first observer. We're just perfectly adaptable." As the handshake's systems returned to normal operations, Sarah watched the last traces of the void fade away. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge yet, not through superior technology or perfect logic, but through their unique ability to embrace chaos and uncertainty. They had reminded the universe that sometimes the most dangerous thing wasn't disorder. It was the pursuit of perfect order at the expense of growth and change. The warning label. 1 month after the Void Cascade incident, the handshake orbited Earth as representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations gathered in the United Nations Assembly Hall. Sarah Chen stood at the podium, still amazed by the diversity of beings before her: crystalline meridians, energy-form Proteans, multi-dimensional Vega collectives, and dozens of other species she was still learning to identify. The Nexus Collective's attempt to perfect the universe taught us all something valuable, she began, her voice carrying across the assembly through universal translators. They showed us that the greatest threat to existence isn't chaos or disorder. It's the belief that they should be eliminated entirely. First observer Lyra floated forward, their patterns rippling with what Sarah now recognized as pride. In the weeks since the incident, we have begun carefully experimenting with reduced neural dampening. The results have been illuminating and somewhat terrifying. A wave of knowing laughter rippled through the assembly. Marcus Young took the podium next, bringing up a holographic display of the affected regions of space. The areas touched by the void haven't simply returned to normal. They've evolved. We're detecting increased quantum stability, enhanced neural transmission speeds, and most importantly, a new resistance to attempts at mathematical perfection. The universe itself appears to have adapted, becoming stronger through exposure to chaos. Just like humans, Dr. Watson added from her seat, earning appreciative murmurs from the assembled species. A representative from the Protean collective rose, their energy form shimming with curiosity. We have reviewed the data from the confrontation. Our models suggest that no species should have been able to conceive of using chaos as a weapon against perfect order. The cognitive dissonance alone should have caused terminal breakdown. Yet humans not only conceived it but executed it successfully. How? Sarah smiled. Because we never saw it as impossible. Humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. When faced with an impossible situation, we don't accept the impossibility. We look for ways to change the rules. Which brings us to the purpose of this assembly, Lyra announced, their patterns becoming more formal. The Galactic Council has reached a unanimous decision regarding humanity's classification status. Sarah tensed slightly. This was the moment that would define Earth's future relationship with the galactic community. Humanity, Lyra continued, will be classified as a protected catalyst species with the following warning label. Caution. Exposure to human problem-solving methods may cause unprecedented evolution, systematic revaluation of established constants, and spontaneous adaptation to impossible situations. Interaction may result in permanent alterations to standard operating parameters. A ripple of amusement went through the human delegates, but Sarah noticed the other species were deadly serious. Furthermore, an elder member of the Vega Collective added, their multidimensional form shifting through complex geometries, we propose the establishment of the Human Adaptation Institute, a place where species can safely expose themselves to human thinking patterns under controlled conditions. You want to learn how to think like us? Sarah asked, surprise. Not exactly, Lyra clarified. We want to learn how to integrate controlled elements of human adaptability into our own thought patterns. The Void Cascade proved that pure logic and perfect order are as dangerous as pure chaos. The universe requires balance. Marcus leaned forward, intrigued. And you think humans represent that balance? Humans, the Protean representative stated, are living proof that chaos and order can coexist productively. You build incredible technologies while maintaining the ability to think beyond their limitations. You create complex social structures while preserving individual adaptability. You seek knowledge while remaining open to changing everything you believe when new evidence appears. In short, Lyra concluded, humans are the universe's immune system, the chaos that strengthens order by challenging it, the disorder that prevents stagnation, the uncertainty that makes certainty meaningful. Sarah looked out over the assembly, seeing not fear or condescension in the alien faces now, but genuine respect and curiosity. We accept this classification, she said formally, and we look forward to helping the galaxy learn to be a little more humanly impossible. Later, on the observation deck of the handshake, Sarah watched Earth rotate below, while Lyra's patterns danced with contemplation beside her. You know what the most remarkable thing about humans is? The Meridian asked. What's that? You're the only species we've ever encountered that sees a warning label as a badge of honor. Sarah laughed. Well, any warning label that includes may cause unprecedented evolution is practically a challenge. And if there's one thing humans love, it's a challenge, Lyra finished. Their patterns shifted to show what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of a smile. The Nexus Collective sought to perfect the universe by eliminating chaos. They failed to understand that the universe was already perfect, not despite its chaos, but because of it. And now? Sarah asked. Now we learn from humanity. Not to be human, we must each remain true to our own nature. But to understand that adaptation isn't just about surviving change. It's about embracing it. Sarah finished, making it part of who you are. As they watched Earth turn beneath them, Sarah reflected that this was perhaps humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, not their technology or their strength or even their adaptability, but their living proof that the universe didn't need to choose between order and chaos. It just needed the courage to embrace both. And as ships from 27 civilizations orbited Earth, their crews cautiously experimenting with reduced neural dampening and controlled exposure to human thinking patterns, a new era began. One where humanity's greatest perceived weakness, their unpredictable, chaos-embracing nature, became recognized as the galaxy's greatest strength. The warning label was just the beginning. The real adventure would be showing the galaxy how to thrive in the beautiful balance between the impossible and the inevitable, one impossible solution at a time.